Hi, for the first Dualistic Unity call-in show that we've done in quite some time. I believe the last show we had was the roundtable, and then we had the retreat in Colorado before that. A lot has been happening on our end in general. We have another retreat coming up in Vermont. We may have a retreat coming up at the end of July in Vancouver. Of course, the Netherlands retreat is coming up as well. That event there is actually still tickets for. If you would like to join us at the Netherlands retreat, I cannot recommend enough that you do so. It's going to be the largest Dualistic Unity community event so far. There will be 34 community members in total, not including Andrew and myself. It's going to be incredible, and just the experience of that many people opening up, being around each other, being willing to be vulnerable. And again, like, we're not expecting you to come there and just jump in. It's a day by day experience. It really is just moment by moment, conversation by conversation, recognizing that it is okay to let go. And that really is the entire point, is that it's okay to let go. You can do that.
Yeah. I feel like maybe sometimes people will have an idea. We oftentimes build ideas of things as we're, thinking about them. But we don't go into retreats with any expectations of how it's going to go. Exactly. We obviously have some degree of a plan, but not, it's like an overarching plan. It's like a sort of structure of, there's going to be a place that we sleep. There's going to be a lodge. There's going to be food and whatnot, and figure out the things, but everything within it, none of that is pre-planned or set up or certain. And so everyone, including us, kind of goes into it with that degree of uncertainty, which allows us to pay closer attention, like with everything, and actually be involved. But to think that it's just this thing where everyone goes into it and they're like, oh, this is gonna, like, this is, and everyone's just like super in it immediately, is typically not exactly how it goes. There's an easing in process. Like, it's still an incredibly unfamiliar situation. I think, I don't know, sometimes I discount that like, as amazing as the retreats always are, it's like everyone's stepping into an extreme degree of uncertainty. Like, you're going into a situation with a bunch of people, and maybe you've interacted with them on Patreon or on, a voice chat on Discord, or you've listened to the podcast and have some idea of us, but that's not the reality of what we are by any means. And there's no way to have an idea of how it's actually going to go. And so everyone's stepping into an extreme degree of uncertainty. Like, you're interacting with people you've never interacted with throughout your entire life. And sure, there's a common mentality for the most part, a willingness, just a willingness to step into uncertainty and remain uncertain about things, about reality. And that's the commonality that connects everyone, besides the obvious commonality of being everyone that's there. But it's a step, coming to a retreat, but the reward is unspeakable. You can't even say how the impact is going to be felt, but it's always felt to some degree, and you don't know what it's going to be. And sometimes there's, being uncomfortable in a situation for a little while is exactly what you need to prove to yourself that you can step into a spot that is uncomfortable. So yeah, the retreats are incredible. And to think that we even have any idea of the best case outcome of a retreat is silly and funny to even consider that. Because as we were talking about in our Dualistic Unity social, it'll be social number 2 just now. You can't know the impacts of anything that you're doing. You can't actually settle upon any idea of what that is. The only thing you can do is pay close enough attention, be as involved as you possibly can with as little assumptions as you can have that will allow you to actually, have as much impact and influence as you can throughout the situation. So yeah, the retreats are a blast. To say I have any idea of what the best sort of situation for them to be is not even close to the truth. But they're a fantastic practice in uncertainty and proving to yourself that you can do something that maybe is a little bit outside of your comfort zone with a bunch of people who are doing the same thing, including us, willing to step into that and be open and be authentic and be yourself. And so it very much, if you're willing to make it what it is, be a life-changing experience. So I do hope that if you can't make it to one of the ones where tickets are available now, at some point, I'm sure we'll see you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the reasons I enjoy these retreats so much is because of how organic they are. We really don't go into it with any sense of knowing what the hell is going to happen, because each and every retreat really is defined by the people who come to it, the work that they're willing to do, and therefore the conversations that they're willing to have. And so there is no way for us to tell you what the retreat will be, but we can tell you that it is a collective work, that it is what everybody puts into it while they're there. And I think that's the reason that by the end of the retreat, everybody feels so close, is because they recognize that they don't have to be in control, that they are in fact always making ripples, and that the more aware they are of those ripples and the more aware everybody else is of their own ripples, the more everybody can kind of appreciate the impact that we all have. It's not a competition. Nobody needs to feel more valuable. It becomes more or less, like, I'm good, how can I help, what can I offer, how about this, I just think this might be a good idea. And there's no like, oh, well, you don't like my idea. Like, there's none of that, because it's just the offer without any expectation of it being received or taken or anything. It's just because I can, because I can. So I wanted to say very quickly and remind everybody, this is a call-in show, which means that if you would like to join us, you can go to dualisticunity.com/live. There is a form that you need to fill in, just acknowledging that this is a podcast episode. What you say on the screen with us here today will become this episode. So other people will be able to listen to it after the fact. It will be officially part of Dualistic Unity. So you will be, once again, making another ripple, something that's worth considering depending on what your intentions are coming to the show. Just keep that in mind. We had somebody call in once upon a time whose intentions were more or less to validate themselves, and unfortunately they left feeling very unsatisfied and leaving comments after the fact, more or less expressing some regret. So just keep that in mind before you join us. Do ensure that you know what you want to say and why. If it's just to rip us down, then more than likely you're not going to feel very satisfied, because frankly, we don't give a fuck.
Yeah, I'm hoping we get more on here at some point. There's going to be a day where we have enough angry people with us that they sort of line up and they're like, all right, call in show time, let's do this shit. But at the same time, like, there's a lot of those people out there right now, and it's kind of a bummer how unwilling they are to get on and chat, given how available we are. And so it's funny to see that play out, to see someone, trolling in the comments, because a lot of people who post videos or have a podcast or whatever aren't quite as available as us. And we're willing to post societally controversial things that people say are off limits or taboo. Like, we'll talk about that because it's important to talk about. We've settled upon these ideas that we think are objective truth, or that shouldn't go questioned, because it makes people so uncomfortable that they become off limits. Like the discussion we've talked about it plenty of times, but with religion and politics, don't talk about religion and politics in mixed company. It's like we've actually gotten to a point in our society where we avoid discomfort to such a strong degree that we've said that talking about certain things that are so uncomfortable are just not allowed. We just can't. You just can't do it. You just can't talk about it in mixed company. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy that there are actually things that are off limits. You can't talk about that. You can't discuss that. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, from a zoomed out perspective, that's insane. That's insanity that there's certain things that we have said are off limits. And people do it with all different other sorts of things in society. You look a certain way, you have a certain background, you have a certain upbringing, and you can't talk about something. Oh, you can't understand that. It's like, isn't it beneficial to garner as many perspectives as possible, to garner as many different points of view as possible? Everyone has their own unique experience. So wouldn't it be helpful to at least listen to everyone? And beyond just the religion and politics discussion, we've said that certain people can't say certain things or talk about certain things or have certain discussions at all, and that's limiting our capacity to understand ourself, myself, as you, as everyone, as anyone listening, as anyone in all of reality. Like, in order to understand ourselves, in order to gain as much context, we talk about gaining context, and that's just about paying attention, about understanding as much as we can. We can't get to an objectively correct answer, but the more context we have, the closer we can get to that answer. And so when we're having discussions, it makes sense to garner as much context as possible, which means having as many discussions, which is with as many different conflicting points of view as possible. Like, conversation is the way that we get closer to these things, but we cut that off. We say that certain people can't talk about certain things, certain topics can't be discussed. So everyone just gets to sit in the corner and hold on very tightly to all of their beliefs and all the things that they identify as. And if anyone comes around, they're like, hey, that belief might be complete bullshit. They're like, oh, you can't say that. You can't dispute me. You can't question this thing because it makes me feel safe, makes me feel secure. No, it doesn't. It just creates enough of a cessation of your fear, despite not getting rid of it at all, that you think it should go unquestioned. But if you were to talk about it, if you were to have the conversation, then maybe that fear wouldn't be as strong. But we have a very strong fear, and then we defend the things that cause it to drop. Say it's 100% fear, causes it to drop 5%. So we just have 95% fear. But if we were to have the conversation, it might drop to 50% fear or 0% fear because we're confused about our perspective of it. But we're not even willing to have the conversation. So we stay at that 95% fear because we think the best we can do is dropping that fear by 5%. And then we can't talk about it ever, which may allow it to drop even more. So anyway, conversation is important. So if you have a differing perspective than us, that's why the fuck we do these things. That's why we do the call-in show, because we want to gain as many perspectives as we can. It's just that we're not standing on anything. We're not standing on that shaky stool of identifying certain things and believing in certain things. So it can be difficult if someone is standing on a fictitious belief system to have a very impactful conversation with someone who isn't standing on so much. But it doesn't mean that it can't happen or shouldn't happen, but people who are standing on those things will avoid the conversation because it allows them to continue to hold on to it, because it's almost like they know that it's so easily questioned, that it's so fucking fragile. You ask 2 questions and it completely falls apart. But don't let that stop you from calling in and having a discussion, because through the discussion, maybe that fear will drop a bit if you're willing to look at it. But we're here to chat, as always.
With love, suck it up. No, I always find it kind of funny because it's like, well, this gives me a sense of security until you ask me, until you question it, until you come along and fuck it all up. And so it really is just waiting for that sense of security. It really is just hoping that nobody's going to challenge it, and this is why often you just interact with people who have the same belief, which is why I say it's so divisive, is because what you're doing is you're holding on to something, and that requires you to have this echo chamber, which means that anybody who doesn't have the same belief, anybody who doesn't have the same concept, is going to be a threat to you, because it means that you might be wrong. Right? So you stick around people who are always like, yep, that's the truth. Yep, absolutely. And this is why often in devout churches and whatnot, as soon as one person starts to question a little bit too much, everybody else turns on them. And I've seen it 100 times. And I'm not exaggerating by any means when I say that. I have talked to a lot of ex-Christians, and this is exactly what they go through. As soon as they question enough, everybody else gets uncomfortable and they turn on them, because it's threatening everything that they hold on to for that false sense of certainty.
Yeah, it's a bummer. But it's of course it plays out like that. Like, they're holding on to something that they need to hold on to in order to feel better. So anyone who, even the thought of someone not needing to hold on to the thing that you're holding on to in order to feel better and able to feel better without holding on to that, brings into conflict your belief that you're holding on to. Like, if you think that that's the way, then someone else doing it a different way and maybe being less stressed will trigger the fuck out of you because you're holding on to that and you're clinging to it so tightly because you feel like you need to. So of course there's going to be that pushback when someone recognizes that they don't have to and they're actually doing all right. You can't even recognize like, oh yeah, that's a reasonable way of doing things because you're holding on to your side of it. So you have to defend it. You have to believe that they're full of shit and just target them as opposed to question it yourself because you're holding on to it so damn tightly.
Exactly. Now, we actually have somebody who would like to join this conversation. We have a few people in the queue, and I'm glad to hear that because often people wait until the very end of this episode before they jump on board. So we have somebody here, Bodge, and they would like to discuss religion and other ritual hereditary practices as tools to understanding and connecting with our past and potential. So this should be fun. Hello, Bodge. We appreciate you joining us.
Hello. Oh, nice. Oh, first, hello. Pleasure to be here. Privileged to even share a space to have just conversations with people that are open and curious. Appreciate it. I mean, just a little bit of context, I guess. A lot of my cognitive dissonances come from being bicultural. So I'm half Chinese, but I grew up in New Zealand, and I did a lot of schooling in China, and it came to pass that whenever I spoke to Chinese people, obviously I don't look fully Chinese, and they treat me like a foreigner. And so I get like a really astute glimpse at the canyon of separation between the East and West. And as you said, dualistic unity, and its whole is just, we are really all one. It's this illusion of separation that just keeps on perpetuating suffering and separation. And then fear, pretending like we aren't just children holding on to things that we do that make us adults, like as if driving a car, getting a license makes me an adult. And then we tick these boxes and finally we've reached adulthood. And there's no ritual practice in a lot of Western and now Eastern society which prepares you for that maturation as a form of, death and renewal. A lot of people feel really, sorry, I can go off on tangents, but I guess to like keep it relevant, like, yeah, the cognitive dissonance for me is like I speak to someone Chinese and they'll speak to me in English, and as soon as I speak Chinese to them, I'm fluent. Like I grew up there like most of my life as well. Culturally, I'm actually more Chinese than I am Kiwi, and it's like I'm immediately family again. And there's this place of belonging and this true connection and community that I used to have this savior complex of like, I'm going to unite the East and West because I learned all these languages when I was a child. I never had a first language. I'm the one that's going to unite these ideas because I never had to learn through translation. Yet I just see how hard or almost impossible it is for some people to ever connect at a deep level. Like my dad doesn't speak Chinese and he's got enough personality that they can express it, themselves through that. But you can't learn about someone. I think my partner told me a quote that was to speak another language is to have another soul. And not to glorify the idea, it's more just to say that like my mom always told me that you can develop a bit of a split personality with it. And so I used to have this like savior complex of I'm gonna save the world. I'm gonna make sure these people can understand each other. And my goal now is a lot more to do with, I don't really want to save the world anymore. I want to help the people that do, like really following the mantra of planting the trees, knowing I'll never sit in the shade, like trying as much as I can, because I do believe that being selfishly selfless is better than not being selfless at all. If that's the way for you to practice getting there. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm taking all the space, but I guess this is what we have to do. I'm so happy to be here talking to you guys. But I guess what I wanted to focus on with religion and even meditation with your recent videos, Andrew, and not in a sense of criticism and not in a way to validate you or to be like, pander to your perspectives, more so to challenge the idea that there are absolute truths within that. Because, the title was The Truth About Meditation. And I think the truth of it carries in the sense that a lot of your audience, yes, like I developed a big spiritual narcissism when I first embarked on my journey at 19. Like this is a number of years ago. And I suddenly thought that like where I got to with meditation and spiritual practice, ritual practice, all this like knowledge or wisdom or whatever, like somehow it was only attainable by me. And it does dissipate, and you can't hold on to that forever. And I think psychedelics is a fast gateway to that feeling of unity. But when you come back down and you don't have a formed identity, I think it's very hard to maintain that. And it's very easy to then fracture yourself into these different parts of you that believe in different things. And the inner critic then grows and criticizes every little part of you. You know, I'm raised Chinese mom, like that was my life. So like, I guess like what I wanted to discuss with you guys, I'd love to stop talking, is, you know, my perspective on religion. I was very anti-religion, Catholic, like schooling, even though I'm not. My mom's Buddhist. I went to temple, like I was cognitive dissonance. And that's, I don't even know if it's dissonance. I think it's just like fragmentation of understanding and ritual practice. But as I'm getting older, I really went through this phase of like hating, like angry, ugly sort of like feeling about religion, you know, in the sense that all these organized structures, usually because of the people at the top and the bureaucratic nature of these structures, meant that the freedom to express yourself got lost in the power and the authority. But now that I'm starting to see, I have this firm belief that in order to criticize something, you need to be able to name everything positive in application of the thing. So like, for example, if you really want to criticize, like say the Islamic faith for all the human rights issues, or, you know, the Christian faith for some, you know, like, I don't want to get into all the nasties of the church. But if you really want to criticize that, I think it's really important to start with the benefits of group practice, community, because what they really do is unify people, and it's a platform to unify people. Even though, like, I'm not religious in any sense, but I'm starting to see why it was necessary for us all those years ago, before connection was so readily available. And if we can learn how these rituals connect us without the sort of deification and this necessity to personify God, I think there are such valuable tools in, like, even the fasting. Like, I look at Ramadan like it's a really easy way to meet that part of you that negotiates, the part that quits, the devil that signs the contract, you know, like the person that says, I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and doesn't, the person that says, I'm going to work out at 6 and doesn't. Like, I think that negotiation that happens internally, I think that's a cool way to meet yourself. Training for a fight camp, cold showers. These are all little tools, and religion has these tools, but they're suffocated by these children that have pretended to be adults. So yeah, that's what I'd sort of like to pass back to you guys, I guess.
I'll weigh in on this quickly. And I'll pass it over to Andrew. First of all, glad you're here. This is all awesome. Glad you took as much time as you did, because you had a lot of shit to say and there's a lot to consider. The first thing I wanted to say is I really appreciate the fact that you had this idea of like bringing the two mentalities together. And in fact, as you're letting that go, you are the embodiment of those two mentalities coming together. That you are in fact making ripples in every conversation you make, or every conversation you have. It doesn't matter if it's one side of the fence or the other. You are going to be much more prone towards leading them towards center, towards leading them towards some middle ground, that you are in fact finding yourself. You're in the process of finding that. If anybody's in the middle of finding it, it's you, right? While everybody else is on one side or the other, you have a unique perspective. So just keep going. I think that's fantastic. Who knows where it's going to go? And that's the fun part about this. We really don't. The other thing is religion. This one's a big one. I've thought about this one a lot because I explored a lot of different religions, and you're right. There are some positives in there. If you were to take, okay, it's kind of like I grew up in the 80s, and at the end of every cartoon, you would have a moral of the story. And the moral of the story was basically what you took with you. And you're like, this is great. This just brings us together, right? Where does that all go wrong? Well, that all goes wrong with attachment. And that's the only problem with religion. As soon as you're attached to it, you have to defend it. Now you have a Christian and you have a Muslim, and they do not get along only because they are attached to their ideology. They're attached to their concepts. They can't recognize that we're both describing the same thing with different words. right? And it's just because of that attachment. And I think that that is unfortunately the only temptation that goes with religion, that goes with all structures, all philosophical structures, is the unfortunate need to attach to something when we're maturing, right? And there is not enough of a voice that says, but that's not what it's talking about, right? Like that's the only thing that's missing in this religious conversation, as far as I'm concerned, is the awareness that everybody's talking about the same thing from a very limited point of view, that everybody's getting caught up in the words rather than what we're trying to describe. And so I think that yeah, there are positives, but it all gets undercut by that attachment. That's about all.
So can I just to rebut, like, I think that's, you've put it so astutely, because I've also said to one of my friends at some point, the whole point is like, attachment, perfect word to use. I've always said that if you're really about your religion, you like, and obviously take this with a grain of salt. I really hate being so absolute. My truths are very changeable day to day. But like, you know, if you're really about what the church is about, you would burn it down to connect with someone from the, do you know what I mean? Like you wouldn't, like, if I really was Catholic or Christian, if I truly believe I'm Christian and I hold those values sacred, I would burn whatever symbols associated with it. You know, it's like the whole thing with money. Like, I'm not American, but I know that there's a massive symbolism within money itself. And that's like obviously a whole thing. But yeah, willing to burn down your own attachment, even just to show that that's not what I'm attached to. Whatever God we believe in is part of the same one. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Ray said it before, but the only true religion is none. Like when you recognize what religion is pointing to, being unity, connection, and all those things, by having a religion that preaches that and therefore causes other religions and whatnot, a number of religions, different religions, and believing in that as being the truth, it takes away, it undermines the reality of what it is, which is that connection, that unity. So, and in past discussions we've had about religion, it's like, you know, the connection happens despite religion. Like people will point to that and they say the benefits of religion being the connection. It's like, yeah, it's despite the belief system and everything. And just, I know Ray covered kind of the religious part pretty well, but in regards to the meditation and my caption for that video, it's always tongue in cheek when I say the truth and whatnot, because it's really just to create a discussion around it. Because when it comes to meditation, like the understanding that it's just about paying attention. And it's just from my own experience. Like I meditated literally every day for 3 years. And it wasn't until I recognized like, oh, I'm actually using this as a crutch. Oh, it's really just about paying attention to reality, recognizing that the thoughts that arise are never going to be the truth of what's actually happening. And so we use something, you know, a few minutes in the morning or at night or whenever we do it, thinking that that's going to carry into everything else that we do. And it's not to say that it can't be helpful in shifting it, but if you're doing it in order to get to an end result, in order to change yourself, it's reinforcing that behavior of doing something for something else, doing something with an ulterior motive. And that is what underlines our experience of reality in a lot of ways. Like doing a thing for the thing itself is the ultimate experience of being what is. And so when people meditate in order to become more peaceful, in order to feel better about themselves, in order to be able to take on the day, it cuts down the impact of that meditation. The closer you come to recognizing that you can just meditate for the sake of meditating, the more likely you are to realize that sitting down with your eyes closed isn't as necessary, because that's what you come to, I think, eventually, if you do it for long enough. And so just because someone went through that process of finding that out doesn't mean that everyone has to. And so you can kind of cut that down into
like,
just paying attention.
From my understanding of meditation, like that's only Vipassana. That's only one form of meditation, because meditation now we use as a blanket term for sort of a ritual practice that actually is so expansive in a lot of different ways. Like just for metta, for example, like loving kindness, practicing just the ability to awaken into loving kindness again is something that people can practice with an ulterior. Not that I disagree. I think you're completely right with Vipassana. Like there is no point to meditate if your intention is to get something out of it, because by then you've missed the point. That's, I think, a Buddhist teaching from way, way back. But there are other forms of meditation, I think, that are important, probably to educate a lot of, like, you've got a massive audience that could learn a lot from it. That, like, for example, metta is, from my experience, just about, it's like throwing a ball. Like I've got some friends that, like, when they throw a ball, they just like don't really throw a ball well. It's like me throwing a ball with my left hand, right? It's just they haven't done it. It's not to say that they don't know how or they don't have the capacity or yada yada. It's not fixed. But like metta, for example, some people might not have had an upbringing that they're very connected to the feeling of loving, or like empathic loving, compassion in itself. And some forms of meditation can practice some familiar experiences of like human consciousness, rather than just meditating in vipassana, which is like being so aware that if someone were to throw a ball at you, you could catch it, because you're just so present with the wind and the sounds of life itself in that moment.
That's interesting. And the only reason I say so is because it's interesting how we have so many different expressions for meditation: meditation in action, meditation in silence, meditation by yourself, meditation with others, so on and so forth. But even in the act of love, there can't be an end result, because that's not love. That's coming from egotism, right? So it's the same practice. It really is. It's just expressed differently, right? It's kind of like Krishnamurti saying empathy has its own action. It doesn't come from a place of up here. Like, what is empathy? It spawns in the moment by virtue of it being expressed and felt as fully as possible. So I'd say that's the same for the form of meditation where you're expressing love. It's still just expressing what you are, without,
of course, you can't practice it if you're actually focused on the end result, is what you're saying. It's not to say you can't go in it without an end result in mind. It's just to say that during the practice itself, there cannot be any attachment to the end result. Yeah,
exactly. This has been a fantastic conversation, Podge. I'm so glad that you called in. Do so again. We do this every 2 weeks, and of course, if you would like to join us on Patreon, we do group.
I've already looked at. I reached out, and I was gonna. I'm in the middle of migrating to the Netherlands, so I've got 2 more months of travel, and then I'll settle and see what we can do.
Awesome. Well, definitely call in next time, because this has been a fantastic conversation. You've made some great points, and you've helped us find a lot of insights. And I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me. Thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate you hopping in, Podge. We'll talk to you soon.
See you, Andrew. Bye.
That was a fun conversation and a great point. And it's interesting, again, like meditation, right? What do we mean by that? What do we mean by meditation? And all of a sudden it's like, well, there's this practice and this practice and this practice. Like, right, let's break it down. Let's break it down, because it ultimately is a state of mind that we're, quote unquote, practicing. So the practice isn't necessarily what's important, right? It's where it's coming from, where it's going, and which can't be, right? This is the whole thing about being present. It's walking an infinitely fine tightrope. We have another person in the queue. I know we have a few people who have submitted the form, but they haven't necessarily clicked the link as yet, which is fine. So we have Justin, who's going to be joining us here. And Justin would like to talk about imagination, which is by far one of my favorite conversations, though also one of the more dangerous conversations to have. So this should be a lot of fun.
All right. I'm excited for it. Justin is connecting to audio. All right.
Justin, hello, welcome.
Hey, hello.
Justin,
Glad to see you
what's
again.
up, dude?
Can y'all hear me good?
Yes.
Last time I joined, I was joined like on a Walmart tablet. Now I'm on a laptop now. So so it's definitely going good. It's going good. Yeah, so I just wanted to pop in and say finally be on this podcast without shitty camera quality. So yeah, I just popped in and wanted to say talk about imagination. Something hit me about like this morning. I was just chiefing on some cushion. I just realized that it all comes to how serious you really like take your imagination. It's like how if it's not like all your mind is like, it's not like a specific part of your mind is imagination. It's like all of it is. It's like every single belief, every single label, every single thought you have is imagination, and shouldn't be associated or should be like held as truth. And like imagination is always in the mind. So there's no reason why you should label or think anything that's in your mind as truth. because all of it is imagination. It's all in your mind. Whatever you think your name is, whatever you think, what how your day is going, or just any labeling at all is just a fault. It's just false because it's all in the head. It's funny because a lot of the time, we say this, say like as Ray said before, uh, it's like we're repeating the same thing over and over again in like verbally, but like in the experience, it's like it just gets deeper. It gets deeper, but it relates as saying the same thing over and over. It's just relaying, but like in the experience, it just goes deeper, deeper, and deeper. It's like, wow, that's crazy. That's crazy how deep this shit goes. It's crazy. But yeah, it's actually insane. And a lot of the times I've thought is like as as you as you let go of uh what you think is truth, you're able to visualize more. It feels like it's like that. It's like you let go of holding on to this idea that you have extra like brain power or something. Not brain power, but it's like you're able to visualize like and be more. It's like you're more in it, and you're able to see more of like what Ari is, and like it's like you're going closer to it, but like you're not getting closer. You're just finding, just like letting go and finding out that everything that can be is already is already it's so weird. It's like it's the same thing. Anything that you picture in your like anything that happens in reality is the same thing as the other thing. It's like if I'm like if I'm super rich, if I'm super poor, it's the same thing. It's the same experience. It's the same essence. It's no different than the other. There's no emotion you could feel from it. There's no there's no labeling to it. There's nothing to it at all. So what's really the difference from being poor and being rich? I mean, there's really no difference. Like people associate all these things with having cars, having nice cars, having lots of money as being good. But as soon as they get it, they're not. They always say it's not how it always seems, because the idea of you getting it in your head is nowhere near like the actual experience of it. So you'd be chasing something that doesn't exist. Desire is like usually just gonna go towards this thing, saying that it will make me happy from idea that you had in your head. And the moment you get to that thing, even if you do, you will see that it's nothing. It's nothing. It's literally nothing. It's the same exact reality. It's the same exact emotion. It's the same exact labeling as you had beforehand. It's the same thing. So I don't really understand how a lot of people just look at the experience and just like label, just so quick like to label it, and don't really even questioning like how is this, like why is this good? Why is this good, quote unquote? Yeah, like I'm very interested in history, but like I look into the past and I really like look how people like organize themselves like in society and socially, and I feel like it's gotten better like the presently, but back in the past we really associated like what like if you didn't get married, then you wouldn't be happy. If you didn't have kids, that wouldn't lead to happiness. That will lead you. If you had kids, you'd be happy. If you got married, you'd be happy. And if you didn't have those things, you'd be out of luck. But like I feel like I'm part of this like society of like actually questioning those things and being like, okay, is this thing that we're associating, is the emotion you're associating to that thing actually what that thing actually is? And I feel like that's why like we've seen it like through marriage is one good example. You've seen it through a lot of the time you see people like in the old ages with these marriages, and they're not going good at all. I've just been thinking about a show called Moral Oral. It's a show adult, so it got canceled because it was too dark. Literally, it was a show about a kid going like it's kind of like in the old ages, old Christian America. His parents, they just got together just because that's what other people say that will make them happy, and this like of these standards of this will make them happy, and they're completely unhappy. The father's an alcoholic. uh they're very common in the in the early ages, and like I feel like people have seen that those things don't actually associate that emotion with the actual thing, and we question those things, and we realize is nothing how we thought it was, and we can let go of it and actually be in the experience, and that is the thing that actually makes us uh kind of like, if you want to actually be like, when you think of a desire, you're thinking of being present in that desire. You're thinking like you're thinking that when I hit this thing, I'm not going to think about it at all. I'm going to be fully present in the moment. But the thing is that you can be fully present now. You don't have to get something to be fully present, because that's what you are. So if you actually want to be happy, you don't have to chase something. That's the thing. You don't have to chase. I'll pass it over to you. I've been talking for a long time.
You're good, dude. That was fucking awesome. I
Yeah, it's
love
been for you
the
too.
spiel. You covered a lot. I tried to jot down a couple notes, but I think just what you ended off there with, and we're kind of covering throughout, was the perception of our value. And I think of it like, when someone gets a lot of money, it's like we use those things as excuses to recognize the value that we always had. It's like, I can't recognize my own value until I get married, or until I have a loving spouse, or until I make a bunch of money, or until this, that, this, that, this, that. And it's all thinking that value comes from something that you get. And we've talked about this before, how value is something that initially came from us. Like, we gave value to things. We gave value based on how we were able to utilize it. Like a car, we give it value because of its function. But now a car, you get a certain brand car, a nicer car. Now we think that it gives us value, and we've completely distorted the point, but it's never been that. And so what you're talking about initially with, being rich or poor, it's not to say that the experience of it doesn't differ to a degree. That'll trigger the fuck out of plenty of people if you start throwing that around social media. I can guarantee it. But I 100% understand what you're saying. The baseline reality of that experience is still you here now. And whatever you place on top of that isn't going to guarantee any happier thoughts or more satisfying experience. There's nothing about it that guarantees anything. And so, but because we've gotten so caught in thinking that things give us value as opposed to us giving value to things, we think that we need more things. We need more shit. We need more relationships. We need more people to love us in order to feel better about ourselves. And so that's where the confusion lies, is in thinking that the external means anything about us. But when you come back to recognizing that it doesn't, and last thing, what you kind of started with here, but I'll finish that statement. When we recognize that it doesn't, it completely shifts our perspective. And so when it comes to the imagination, that perception of our value is the wall, I think, that hinders us from being able to utilize our mind in all of the ways that it can. Like, our perception of ourself is the wall. And until we recognize that our perception of ourself is not the reality of what we are, where we think our value lies is not where our value actually lies. Like, we can't settle upon any certainty. That wall starts to drop, and then our mind expands, and we're able to actually utilize it in the way that we always could have, but we were so caught in ourself, in thinking about ourselves, in measuring our value, in comparing ourselves to everyone else. And until we let go of that, that's all we see. That's the only thing our mind is utilized for, is that. But as that drops, all of a sudden a whole nother world opens up, and then that's everything. But until then, it's any perception that we have, any idea of a situation being good or bad, is us using our imagination. As you said, like all of those perceptions are imagination. I really like the point you brought up there because I hadn't thought about it like that. Like our perception of something, our opinion of something is the same mechanism of using our imagination as kids when they're young, building a fort and saying the ground is lava. You know, it's the same imagination, but we believe it to be truth. We believe it to be more serious because we see ourselves in a certain way, but it's always going to be relative to us until we recognize that our idea of ourself isn't actually what we are, and where we think our value lies isn't where it lies. And we come to terms with that uncertainty, then our mind is actually, you know, becomes more of a tool as opposed to just using us with that wall of ourself in the way of being able to use it for the mechanism that it could be used for.
Yeah,
Architecture, art, science, all of it, it's based on the imagination, right? Every building you see was once imagined by somebody and then it was turned into a design. Every piece of art you've ever seen is imagination. Every piece of music you've ever heard is the result of imagination. We use it in everything.
Yeah, and it really speaks how much you can actually just like let go of that wall that opens you up to so many other like possibilities of what that you can wholly imagine. So it's like you're just cutting yourself off from not only from being able to see and be aware of more, but now also to be able to focus in on the thing that you're actually going to be visualizing, to be focusing in on it. So if you're holding that idea of yourself in your mind, you won't actually be focusing on the thing that you're trying to imagine. So you're cutting yourself in two ways. You're cutting yourself off in limiting yourself and not being able to actually be in the moment where you're actually creating. So it's insane.
Yeah, no, dude, I love when you come on. Yeah, I think you're our most regular call-in show caller. We gotta get you into some of our groups. We got our public group chat tomorrow. I think you could add a lot to the conversation.
Yeah,
I'm free to hop in whenever, man. But you got a fuckload of insight, and I appreciate you sharing it with us. I think people are gonna enjoy listening to you as always.
Thank you.
So appreciate you taking the time to join us.
I always like being on the show.
Fuck yeah, man.
Thank you. Next time I come in, I will never have as bad as camera quality as I used to have my other tablet. So yeah,
man, whatever works, you know, and that's the whole thing. We use what we've got to make this shit happen, and then we get other shit, and we're just like, this is awesome, and that's the whole journey. But I just want to say quickly, Justin, I don't have anything to add because I know you're already turning over all the stones. So I'm just really, really excited for the next thing you have to say to us and the next insight that you trip up. Just keep going, man. Question fucking everything.
All right, thank you. All right, see ya. All right, bye.
See you, Justin. I love that, dude.
Right? Yeah. It's the enthusiasm. It's that fire. It's just like, holy fuck, like there's so much. And it's like, yeah, that's it. And that's exactly what happens when all of a sudden you just realize all that stuff that's kind of keeping you down. You can just shrug it off and you're like, wow, there's a whole world around me that I haven't been looking at. And it's a world of infinite possibility. And we're just sitting there going, that's not possible. That's not possible. This is what this is. This is what this is. This is what this is. And it's like, well, how do you know that? It's because I want to know that. That's it. I want to feel like I know that, because the alternative is that I have to believe in myself. And I keep thinking that's an idea, and every idea is questionable. So how do you believe in a questionable idea? It just doesn't work, right? We have another guest who actually joined us at our previous 2 retreats, has joined us at every retreat up until now, and will be at the next one in Vermont as well. Of course, this is Amanda. Everybody knows Amanda, who has been listening to the podcast for quite some time. Amanda is kind of the glue that helps us keep the community together and often motivates Andrew and myself to go beyond our limitations and push a little bit farther. And so we are always happy to have Amanda on the show. How you doing, Amanda?
Hi. One second.
Oh, I'm hearing the live in the background. Appreciate you.
Okay. All right. So we're watching the live show, and then that kind of conflicts when you're on the live show to have the live show in the background. So it's like, how many minutes are we trying to listen to? One at a time is enough for me. So I'm But hi guys, how are you? You know, it's very good to see you after my epic adventure into Electric Forest this past weekend. And I was on a drug-filled adventure through the forest and watching epic fucking dubstep and bass shows. And I got to see Shaq for 5 minutes and then cut out of there because I was like, stick to what you're good at, stay in your lane, Shaq. You know, you're much better at basketball and ESPN sports. So, you know, maybe don't DJ when you're not even in love with it. That's what I don't get about people who shift careers and they try something because it looks cool, but then you can tell that they're not actually in it. And it's like, I hope you know that we know that you're not in it, guy. And I know you have a lot of yes men who are like circle jerking you nonstop. And I guess that's a great experience, I imagine. But my hands are empty, not jerking over here. And so I will tell you, you might want to reconsider your path of a career. But he seemed so desperate because he was like encouraging mosh pits. And he's like, I want to see like 5 or 6 mosh pits. I don't, you know, I'm gonna have to go in there. And then he's like flexing during his set, like I'm a strong man. I'm a strong man.
Moshing.
Oh, so that was so fucking hilarious. I was like, all right, you know, big career, all this money, all this attention, but you really need those mosh pits, don't you? Desperate for the pits, huh, Shaq? I can feel it. So I'm going to leave you with all these people who want to maybe give you what you're looking for. And then I left to the Selenium show, which was epic. And so that was so much fun, but it was so great to just hop around everywhere. But I must admit, I'm a little tired because I went from the June retreats, back-to-back June DU retreats to Electric Forest. And I'm like, you know, we really might need to sleep at some point.
That is fair. Sleep is overrated, but you know, it's a good exercise in recognizing that, you know, just because you're tired doesn't necessarily mean you have to sleep. You can push yourself to a certain limit, but what is that limit? And don't go beyond it because there's a consequence. But it's nice to, you know, push yourself from time to time. I'm glad you had a good time, is what I'm saying. I'm really looking forward to Dualistic Unity having a music festival at some point. That's going to be dope. We were talking about some of the retreats that we just had in Colorado, and a lot of the insights that have come from those retreats. Of course, you were there at the retreats in Colorado, and we just wanted to say how much we appreciated that. But how was your experience at the retreats? Because although we've had a few conversations, you did go to Electric Forest, and Andrew and I have not had the chance to connect with you since we parted ways.
Yeah. So the June retreats were amazing. And I know that I say this after every retreat that like, it's the most amazing experience, but they seem to be getting like the amazing experience seems to deepen, and it just seems to embody more of what I experience, not more of what I think I am, but just more of the experience. Just seems to, the space extends, and in that space, the fullness just fills it automatically. So it just feels like there's expanding and fulling and expanding and fulling and not too much contracting. It feels incredible. But this last time, it was the most 10 amazing days of my life. And I got to be there for the 2 retreats and connecting with different groups of people. And it just felt like a full cup filling other full cups. Like it never felt like anybody was really empty. And I never really felt like anyone was looking for some huge need to be filled or for some big external validation. It felt like people were really there to share presence. And I don't know how you can take that however you want, but that's like the best 2 words I can describe is that we are sharing presence, the presence that we are. And there's no words that can truly encapsulate what that feels like. So I strongly encourage everyone to make it to the retreats. I'd love to meet you all. I would love to just get to know more of the different perspectives, because I just was listening to Justin, and I love his perspective on imagination and how that's the same as when we're projecting our perspectives. And I was like, fuck, that is the same. And I love the analogy you used, Andrew. It's just like with lavas on the floor. That's just as much as Jeff is an asshole. They're just as much. And shout out to the Jeffs out there. I've got some good friends named Jeff. It's nothing against. It's just whatever name popped up. John's an asshole. Bob's an asshole. Amanda's an asshole. Like whatever name you want to put in there. That's just as much a story as the floor is lava, and you treat the floor like it's actually lava, and you treat Jeff like he's actually the asshole when he could have just been having a bad day, and you took it personally because you were being a little bitch. So it's not all on Jeff.
Exactly. No, I love that perspective of it. I'm definitely going to be chewing on that a bit. But yeah, in regards to the retreats, it's funny because of course people want certainty. They want to know exactly what a retreat was like. And it's interesting because we make the retreats what they are. Every single guest that's there makes the retreat what it is. There is no retreat and then guests that experience the same sort of thing every single time. There's no like overarching structure. It's like, this is exactly what a Dualistic Unity retreat is like. This is exactly what you're going to get from it. This is exactly how they go. This is exactly what you're going to come away with. These are the insights you're going to gain from it. It's like, it's entirely up to you for each and every person. Each and every person makes the retreat. It's kind of like the threads in a tapestry analogy. Like the threads make the tapestry. Without the threads, there's no tapestry. There's no tapestry that exists separately from the threads. The threads are the tapestry. The people who come to the retreats are the retreat. And so I think that's one of the most beautiful parts of it, because each retreat has been incredibly different, but also incredibly similar in the sense that there are things that are taken away. There's a fullness of an experience. There is a common mentality that goes into it, which is just being there for yourself, as yourself, with yourself, and finding out what the hell that means. Like, how deep does this rabbit hole of connection go, really? And so that's the beauty of finding out and being there for it, is like, you make the experience what it is. You're interested in coming to a retreat, you get to make that retreat. You get to be that retreat. You get to experience the retreat, but also make it what it is. It's both all the time. And so going back to the imagination component, I think that's such a great perspective. Like, I'm really liking that insight, that our opinion of a situation, our idea of someone, is equally imagination as everything else. Like, we discount how much our perception is imagination. Like, it's still the same imagination being utilized. We're just utilizing it in, I don't know, it's like we utilize it in a more and more destructive manner as we grow up, and we think that we're no longer using it. We box imagination into this thing. It's like, oh, it's what children do. They use their imagination. We're fucking using our imagination all the time. Any idea you have of anyone is your imagination. Your entire perception of reality is imagination all the time. And we discount that. So yeah, definitely going to shift my perspective on all those things and help, take it quite a bit less seriously.
It's just that some things are easier for us to reconcile as possible. And so all of a sudden it slips from being imagination to potentially reality. And it's usually just based on the things that we view ourselves, right? Like, we see ourselves as not being able to handle a certain challenge. And so all of a sudden our imagination pops up something about the future that it matches up with our perception of ourselves. We're like, oh my God, it's all going to go to shit because I already think that I can't do it. And so all of a sudden it just becomes that believable. It becomes that much more believable, because it matches up with our perception of ourselves, not recognizing, again, equally, our perception of ourselves is just as much imagination.
Yeah, but we use certain words like I'll say, like, oh, I'm caught up in a fantasy, right? And that word implies imagination, but that's like the only time I hear adults saying in some way in modern language that they're using their imagination outside of the normal, construct that we're given. It's like, oh, I'm fantasizing about this guy, or I'm fantasizing about this job or this girl, or I'm dreaming, I'm believing. But they don't see that the imagination is just as much a word that could be used to substitute dreaming, believing, and fantasizing. And I have the same thing about the retreats. Like, I had imaginations about what it would be, and ultimately it was just, I don't know, and I want to find out. And no matter what it becomes, I can handle it, because I've handled everything up until this point. So why can't I handle another 10-day retreat? The way that I like to describe it to people is just that it's like the retreat is the blank canvas and we are the paint. And so you know that there's going to be a canvas and you know that there's going to be paint, but you don't know what the picture is going to look like at the end. But that's what keeps it the same. And that's what keeps it different, is that the image will look different, but the structure that allows for that image to be created is always consistent. So do you want to be paint on this next retreat canvas, or are you too scared to jump on the canvas with us because you're not sure what the picture will look like or what your contributions will look like, because you have an imagination or a perception that your contributions to the picture won't be valuable?
Well said. I love the imagery about the fact that all of us are basically paints that create the end result or whatever. It's not even an end result. That's the funny thing, is that we've all been impacted, and then we go forth into the world kind of being changed paints, ready for the next painting that we're going to be a part of. So it's a great experience. It really is. And we can't communicate the difference. We really can't. Like, even here in this conversation, Amanda and Andrew and I, we talk fairly frequently. And even here, we recognize that there is a level of distortion. There's a level of distance here that's unavoidable just because we're communicating through Zoom. There is a gap. Whereas sitting in the same room, there's no mute button. Everybody can feel the pace that everybody else is at. And there is this short period that usually takes a day or two for all of the paces to suddenly line up, for all of these different frequencies to start to sync together, and for some larger interplay to start to find itself, because we are all, again, intelligence in motion. And so when we come together, all of a sudden our intelligence is just like, what do we do with this? And if we all get out of the way, it finds its most efficient form. And that's what these retreats are. And then when we can take the retreats and expand them out into larger events, larger communities, larger groups, even just smaller groups in smaller areas, just expanding everywhere, then all of this just becomes intelligence in motion. It's not us doing anything. It's us being part of what's already being done.
Exactly. Just playing our roles, playing our parts, being the entirety of the experience. And that's the beauty of it, when a bunch of people are willing to do so and recognize that in, the same location, the same situation, the same experience, making it what it is, as opposed to a lot of the time where we feel so separated from everyone. And so it's really just a time to come together for a bunch of people to interact in that mentality and be the painting and be willing to be the entirety of that painting. So I love that imagery and the description of the retreat in that way, Amanda. And it's always a great time chatting. I think you and Justin are up there for top callers in the call-in show. So I always appreciate your insights, and I'm excited to hear more about Electric Forest at some point, but it sounds like it was a fucking awesome time.
Oh my God, it was epic. And although I was partying and not sober for most of it, I was still taking mental notes, because as the glue, we can't help but be the glue. So it's like, oh, that's going to stick. Oh, that's going to stick. We're taking that mental note, put that back in the back pocket. We'll take that for later, because it just was exactly what I want. Or certain things that they did is exactly what I want for the DU retreats, because it made so much sense. It was so efficient. But it's the same thing with festivals. People think of the retreats like it's so different. Like when you go to the bar, do you know what it's going to be like every time? Because the last time I fucking checked, it's always a mystery. And I know the structure. It is a bar. There's a bartender. They serve drinks. But that's technically all I really know is going to happen, just like any Christmas party or work event or anything like that. So it's like, there's never a party or event or retreat or festival that you go to that you have 100% certainty of what it's going to be. But you still go anyways. Why? Because you want to find out. So how much do you want to find out? And, and I do appreciate that at the retreats, like there's no hiding. There's no hiding. Like you just like, even if you don't say it, we all feel whether you're being honest or not, whether you're being open or hiding, whether you're putting on a show or not. And I could feel that too from the retreats. I was like, well, fuck, man, even if I try to hide, what's the fucking point? Everybody can feel where I'm at anyway. So we might as well get deep into the shit, look like a hot, crazy mess, and get past it to have that beautiful bliss that comes from embracing the chaos that we can experience. So I do appreciate that almost inescapable authenticity that is just felt and shared between all of us. And I don't say that to discourage people. I say that because I want you to understand, like, I hope that you come here not trying to put on a show, because if you didn't realize that we're all not trying to put on shows, we're all taking off our masks. This is the one place that you really might want to consider putting it down. Because if you want to hold on to the mask so much, maybe that environment isn't the best for you. But it's a really great experience and surprising to take off the mask and realize you don't need it. And so that was one of the biggest insights I had from June, was that I didn't need the story of Amanda as much as I thought I needed her. And it was really light. It felt very, I felt very light, just letting that go. And not that I let it go and Amanda, the story disappeared forever, but it was almost like she went to like the back. Like she like, we're talking about a stove, like instead of front burner, she went to the back burner, and I could still like feel the story, but I just didn't feel like it. And I didn't think I needed it. So if I switched it out for like, all of a sudden I'm Ashley, all of a sudden I'm Jessica. All of a sudden we switch out the story. It felt like I could switch out any story because I didn't need any one of them, because I'm not any one of them. And so that was really wonderful, because I did not have that experience on my own. And it was a result of putting down the mask and realizing we never needed the mask at all. And all of you helped me have that realization. And I could not be more grateful for the experiences and the lessons that I take with me, because even as every retreat ends, they don't end. They stay with me, because you are the retreat. So you can't let go of something that you are. You know, it just doesn't seem possible. But then you're not identifying with what you are, because you don't need any story about what you are to just be it.
Well fucking said. Yeah. It's as if most of the time we're running around with armor because everyone else is running around with swords. Get to the retreat, no one's got a sword. You're like, fuck, guess I don't really need this armor anymore. So we can take it off. Again, takes maybe a day or two to realize, like, this is really heavy armor and no one has a sword. So there's not really a point to having all this fucking armor. So I can take it off. And then you do, and then it's glorious. So yeah, well fucking said. Everything, every way that you put all of that, I appreciate it very much. You don't need the story as much as you think. You're still you, regardless of the story you tell yourself. So always a pleasure chatting, Amanda. I appreciate you very much. And yeah, I look forward to chatting more about all this, maybe on Patreon in a little while, in about an hour. We'll maybe chat more, if not tomorrow.
No worries. Thank you so much, guys. I love you. I love our community. And I look forward to being back soon. Take care. I'll be watching. No. Bye.
Bye, Amanda.
That's awesome. We had a couple of questions in the comment section just asking about our next retreats. The next retreat that is absolutely happening and there are tickets available for is the Netherlands retreat, which is our largest community event. It is happening on November 11th to November 19th. This is a 9-day event. It is the full retreat experience, not a mini retreat where we compress the full retreat experience and down to like 4 days, but the full experience. By the time you leave this, you will have felt like you've been with us for months. And then you will be going back to your life with fresh eyes in the most extreme way that we can get you there, in the most organic and relaxing way that we can get you there as well. Just by recognizing, as Andrew said, that you don't have to be wearing that armor all the time, that you are in fact way faster than you might think in terms of adaptation. You can just go into the world without all of that unnecessary weight. And so if you can join us at the Netherlands retreat, please do. Tickets are available. There are some shared rooms, some semi-private rooms, and a couple of private rooms. We've made a lot of different pricing options available as such, because it is such a large event. Likewise, we are currently trying to decide whether or not we're going to do a mini retreat in Vancouver, Canada, on July 27th to July 31st. At the moment, we have 5 people that would like us to do so, but we need 2 more. And so if you are interested in doing that and would like to come to the retreat, we currently have a poll on our Patreon page where you can just let us know. Yes, I would absolutely like to go to that, and we'll get in touch with you and we'll discuss the tickets, and then we'll make that happen so we can all hang out with you for a weekend, because a lot of work gets done here and it's nice to be able to do that work with people who are in the work, not people who are talking about the work or trying to teach the work, but people who are actually doing it. You know, that is the big difference, is that we're not teachers. We're not gurus. We don't come from on high. I'm not trying to teach shit. You know, it's just that I'm going through this and I'm expressing what I'm going through, because I know when you break it down far enough, we're all going through suffering and conflict and frustration and disappointment and loneliness and blah, blah, blah. It's all, there's a reason we have so many goddamn words for these things, is because they're universal experiences. It's just that they're not the words themselves. And so when you start getting past the words, you start seeing more of what it is you're experiencing. And that's all we are expressing. That's all we're talking about. We're not trying to teach you anything. As Krishnamurti said, we're weighing things together, important things about our existence and what the hell we're doing here. How often do you just sit with people and weigh things together without having to settle on an answer, without having to be right, without that person trying to prove you wrong or validate themselves or compete and compare with you? How often is that the case? That is all this is about, whether it's through our group discussions here on Zoom, 5 days a week on Patreon, or it's at our retreats, or eventually our music festivals, or eventually a comedy festival, or eventually a camping trip. There are a bunch of things that we are doing to basically just bring us all together, because it's not about Andrew or I. It's not about the shit we're talking about. It's about the experience of all of us doing the work and being in it together.
Absolutely. Yeah. With that experience and that shared experience of suffering, conflict, thinking there's something wrong with you, we're always trying to hide those parts of us too. Like we try and hide them, and our society promotes hiding them, getting rid of them, suppressing them, numbing them, as opposed to just allowing them to be, like expressing them. Oftentimes the things that we think are so wrong with us are the things that we're just afraid of expressing. And so at the retreats, they're an awesome time to just be able to express the entirety of you, with a bunch of people expressing the entirety of themselves, not trying to hide so much, not maintaining that suit of armor. And that's all we're trying to do with anything, whatever group it may be, whatever retreat, whatever call-in show, any of it is just dropping our own armor and allowing other people to do so as well, or at least feel comfortable enough to do so as well, because there's no guarantee either. Like it's on you, but we can set up an environment that it at least is about as conducive as you can come up with to allow for those to realize that they don't have to hold on to that armor so much anymore, and then carry that into the rest of your life. Realize, oh, I don't have to maintain this armor any time, because all those swords people were running around with weren't the swords that I thought they were. They were made up shit. They were like those little foam swords you get at a toy store. And yeah, they can try and hit you, but it's just them. It's like a little kid with a sword running around the classroom in kindergarten, being a dick, like smacking everyone with a sword. It's like, it's on them. They're not doing anything. It doesn't have to do with you. It's just them being a dick and trying to express their own frustration or anger. And so when you're in an environment that doesn't have so much of that, you realize how much of that is stemming from people's perceptions and people's judgments, and people utilizing their imagination, believing it to be the truth. Their idea of you causes them to need to act in a certain way based on their idea of themselves that all exists inside of their mind. So it's a fantastic place to drop that guard, drop that armor, and just fully be yourself, and see that is a actual way you can exist.
Well said. We have nobody in the queue at the moment. So if you would like to call in, please do so. dualisticunity.com/live. Margaret, I know you had your name in. If you'd like to join us, we'd love to talk to you. You don't have to, no pressure whatsoever, but I know that you put your name in and you had the link, and if you don't want to join us here, then there's always in the private groups on Patreon as well. But we would love for you to talk to us. And that is something I want to say about the Patreon groups, is that if this is something that you're working on, being able to express yourself in an environment that you don't necessarily have to worry about judgment, even if you are worried about judgment, in an environment that is going to continue to encourage you to disregard that shit because nobody's judging you, I highly recommend joining us on Patreon. It's $5 a month for tier 1. We have a 7-day free trial right now. And there have been so many people who have joined our Patreon, and at one point they wouldn't even put their screen on. They didn't want to talk through their mic. They would just chat in the text section, and then a few weeks later, all of a sudden they're turning their microphone on. They're saying a few things, and then within a few months, they're on video chatting with us, laughing, and then all of a sudden they come to a retreat, or we're able to talk to them more often on groups, and before you know it, that fear has started to disappear, and it's translating into the rest of their life because they've had a chance to practice pushing beyond the thought that they couldn't do it, because that's all that's happening. That's all we're ever doing, is we're looking at the thought that tells us you can't, and we're going, well, maybe that's not the case. And then we're pushing a little beyond it. And maybe reality's like, no, it's harder than you think. That doesn't mean you have to stop. Doesn't mean you can't. It just means that the ideal that you had of what the journey will be is not the journey itself. But that doesn't mean you can't. And that's all this is about, is getting past that thought that tells you what you can and cannot do. Just allow yourself to unfold. Jump in. And so if you're sitting on the fence, wondering whether or not you should call in to one of these live shows, then I would encourage you to do so, just for the sake of telling your brain to shut the fuck up.
Yeah, because so much of our fear stems from the unknown. It's not that it's a scary thing. It's just something that you don't know, that you haven't experienced much, which makes you think that it's scary, but it could actually be one of your favorite things to do. Like for a very long time in my life, sharing a perspective of mine on social media, talking to people in a group, talking to people in a live show, that would be one of the scariest things I could have thought of in my head. And now it's one of my favorite things to do. And so it's just that wall of the unknown. Like we're not even willing to find out because it's inherently uncertain. It's like being in a prison with the door open, not knowing what's out there, and just being afraid of taking that step. Like that's the fear, is just not knowing how it's going to turn out, what's going to happen. And so when you understand that there isn't so much, and you understand that your value doesn't come from how the situation turns out, there isn't so much weight anymore going into the situation. And so that's, the benefit of understanding that your value isn't derived from that. Then it just creates enough freedom in yourself to take those steps. But that's what it's about. It's not about just stopping when you feel a little bit better. It's about then taking the step into the uncertainty because you feel a little bit better, and understand that your value isn't tied to how it turns out. Like you can step through that door and understand that no matter what happens, you'll be okay. Your value won't waver. Your value won't drop, but it also won't increase. And understanding that can just help to allow you to continue stepping through that uncertainty and finding out what you're capable of.
Once again, well said. Absolutely. We have another person in the queue. This would be Britt, who has come to update us on their psychedelic experience and how that journey is going for them. So I'm very excited about that. Britt, how you doing? Hello. Oh, we are still connecting to audio, so we will wait a few moments here while that happens. I will eventually get the timing down for this call-in show.
Hello.
Brett, are you there? Hello.
Hi. Sorry, that took me a hot minute.
No worries at all.
No problem at all. Glad you could join us.
Hi. Nice to see you
Good to see you.
guys.
Good to see you.
I just tuned in, so I haven't really heard much about what you guys are saying. I just signed on to TikTok and saw that you were on, so I was like, "Hey, want to come say hi?"
Yeah, here you are. Appreciate you joining.
Thanks. I don't know if you remember, like a month ago, I was talking about how I was kind of like anxious about diving back into mushrooms, and you guys were, like, it's probably just some like anxiety that I had built up that, it doesn't, I just need to kind of get past that, which, I did. And sorry, I'm like super blocked out here. There we go. But I ended up diving back in and kind of went a little hard the first time, which was perfect. It was lovely. And then thereafter, there's just one experience that happened last weekend. I used to kind of microdose quite a bit like a decade ago, and I really enjoyed it. And I went out with a friend. We went up to Tahoe and we both microdosed, and we like went out and we thought we were just going to go walking through some meadow somewhere, and it ended up being like 1.5 feet of snow. And I'm out there in like trail runners, and of course they have like snow boots on, so I'm just flailing all over the place. And it ended up being such a great experience because at that time, like I could only go like 12 feet and then I just fall because, snow. And the person I was with was really accepting and like just sitting there laughing at me in the most joyous way possible. And I was dying laughing, and I don't know this person super well. And they were like, I love the fact that you're not getting mad at the situation. You're just enjoying what's happening. And I just found that so lovely. And I think that I'm not saying that the mushrooms had anything to do with it, but it's just like the whole experience of having someone appreciate you for, the joy that you're experiencing, but then also just loving the whole situation, no matter how good or bad it is. It was such a great time. But yeah, I felt like I wanted to share that with you guys.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've had a number of experiences with friends on mushrooms, and it's always just a great time. Like it allows you to kind of have an experience that's a little bit different, that then I think changes all your experiences moving forward as well, in a sense, because you see that like, oh, seeing things in that way, laughing at dumb shit, laughing at each other, going through a situation and being okay with looking silly is an acceptable thing to do. And then
Yeah.
moving forward, you're more willing to be like that in your day-to-day life. And I think that's the beauty of psychedelics, is they allow you to see things even just a tiny bit differently. And that carries with you throughout the rest of your life. So it's always amazing to have those sorts of experiences, especially with friends, because it's then a shared experience, and then you both take away from it, and it impacts every interaction that you have moving forward. So that's fucking awesome. I'm glad you took the leap back into the mushrooms.
Right.
It's always great to hear.
Yeah, that's always a good time. Watching your running videos are hilarious, I have to say. It's so good. Just like the fact that you just put out there what's on your mind. I'm like, yeah, I would be thinking and doing the exact same thing. It's lovely. I appreciate those.
I'm glad you enjoy them. Yeah, I've been dealing with like a number of fucking injuries, so we haven't gotten to another one in a while, but I'm hoping to soon. I have a doctor's appointment later this week, and as long as that goes well, probably just do one the next day. Just see, and I'm also mustering up the courage to see if I can do any more. If not, I'll probably just go back to a smaller dose gummy wise, because that really shook me a bit. They kind of carried into more shaking. It was like the initial sort of thing that shook me, and then a month later kind of got shaken a little more by a mushroom experience. So they're always a lot of fun though. I think yeah, normalizing those things is something I very much enjoy doing, and getting rid of at least a little bit of the stigma and the fear about them, despite sometimes being like, thinking that I'm dying or something probably isn't the best way to make people more willing to dig into it, but at least just, normalizing the conversation, so
Yeah,
I'm glad you enjoy them though.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad that I got back into it. It definitely it's lowered my anxiety, and it's so weird the way that it's able to do that. Even like people that I work with have noticed I can get kind of anxious and kind of like high strung, and they're like, wow, you're not at that level as much anymore, huh?
Yeah, I love that about psychedelics, because it brings you closer to the present, which means you're not so fixated on the idea of controlling the future.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're okay there. And that half the time we're subconsciously running away from that. Right. Like we're trying not to be present. We're focused on the future or the past. What's going to happen tomorrow? What do I do next on the task list? All of that stuff. And so we get into the habit of feeling like we need to know. And on psychedelics, it's like, you can't. All your strings are cut. Relax.
just deal with what's happening. That's all you can do. Well, thank you guys for chatting with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for returning.
Yeah, always. Well, I'll try to. Like I said, random day off. That's fun when I remember to poke onto something. And I'm glad that you guys post that you're like on things when you're on them. So if I'm randomly scrolling, I'll find you.
Fuck yeah. Yeah, we do our best, and we do our best to be out there having conversations as often as we can, being as available as we can. So I'm glad you took advantage of popping on the Colin show. And
For sure.
yeah, love to hear about the experiences.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
You too. Bye, Britt.
Thanks. Bye.
Oh, I love these call-in shows. This is moving along, quite smoothly today. This is great. We have another caller, Levi G. Levi would like to discuss rough financial advice and life within that. So I have no idea where this is going to go, but Levi, we appreciate you joining us, and I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about the topic at hand. Right now, we're just waiting for Levi's audio to connect.
All right. I'm excited to see what Levi's got for us. Levi, hello.
Hello.
How you doing, man?
Howdy. Good. How are you guys? Shit, I got the
Doing
video going down there. Get feedback.
No.
What is up?
Um,
So actually I've been following you for like a year, a little bit over that, just because I saw like one video that came into my feed, and it was just like sort of very optimistic way of looking at something. You were on a run, which is cool, but it only had like, I don't know, 100, 200 likes, and I was like, I like this a lot. So then I went through like your whole page, and I just really dug it. I really loved it. And I've just kind of, whenever I see them, they're refreshing to kind of like, just kind of, get me out of wherever I'm at. sort of just take a step back. And so where I'm coming into play with my question for you here is, so I'm 22, I have no debt, which is great. It's like really better than a lot of my friends. And I have like 15 like K in my savings, but I still don't feel like I'm where I want to be. I'm working with my father. He owns a carpentry company. And along those lines, like I can take it over. He's to the point of retirement. I don't really love it, but if I did it right, I wouldn't have to work, forever because it does pay very well. So it just comes along the point of like I can ask my family members. I've got 6 other siblings. So I've got a lot of advice coming from all ends of the spectrum, like nurse, doc. When my brother's like a heart surgeon, my other brother works for like the government, works with grants, getting people jobs out of prison, like so many different opinions. But it just sort of comes down to like I don't know yet what will make me content in that line, because that is really what I'm looking for. Like really, I have like everything I want right now. Like, and I'm like, what do I do with this money? It's just sitting in my savings. I don't know what to do with it. My brother's like, oh, you should put it into, this company is coming up. I know this guy, and I'm like, I don't know shit. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it. And it even if let's say I would invest in something and then it would bring me this money, I don't know if that would necessarily meet the expectation that I have for it, which is how it's kind of gone. It was like, oh, 5,000, that's awesome. And it's like, oh, 10,000, that's awesome. And it's just like keep it. I've never really hit a point where it changes the feeling behind it.
Oh, I feel you. I think I don't know if anything I say is going to be incredibly satisfactory, but I think understanding that there is oftentimes with situations like this, like deciding what to do with the rest of your life or a situation at hand, like there's not a right answer. There isn't a spot that you come to that's like, oh, this is definitely it. I think understanding that in making the decision, no matter what you hear from anyone, like you're the best one for the job always. Like we can absolutely go back and forth and have this conversation, and I'm happy to do so, and we will continue to do so. But at the end of the day, it's for you, and it's on you to make that decision. And I think at least when it comes to decisions, especially what we perceive to be like very big decisions, we can get caught in thinking that the decision is like the end all be all, but it's really our mentality that we maintain, usually post decision, that allows like any decision that you make has the potential to be the correct decision, the best decision, the quote unquote right decision. There isn't one that like you make it and then the others and you're like, oh shit, I thought that was it. Like that's not how it goes. Like everything has the potential to be so. And so I think understanding that it's about you and your attention to the experience that you're having that's going to dictate how well something plays out is important to keep in mind. I think that when you are in a spot where you don't have debt, you have some savings to work with, like finding out for yourself what you're capable of, be it, being involved in the company that your family's involved in or not, is completely your call. But I think kind of finding out, possibly moving locations, moving out, finding like a new city to have some experiences in, can be a great opportunity to find out what you're capable of. And there's no way to know how that's going to impact you. But a lot of times when we're stuck, stagnant, not really sure what to do, a change in environment, a change in scenery offers new perspectives that we couldn't even possibly imagine beforehand. Like you can't know until you know, you can't see it until you see it, you can't experience it until you experience it. And that will then shift some of the things and at least shake things up enough to maybe see things just a little bit differently, that may at least allow you to see more context and then make a more informed decision for what you want to continue to do. Because the more context that you have, the closer you can get to the quote unquote right or correct answer. Not saying that there is one, but the more context, usually the better.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And yeah, there's nothing. Yeah. I don't, that was really, my brother said very similar stuff to that.
It's an interesting journey, and so I have a different perspective on this just because I'm turning 44 very shortly, and I remember how long this journey has taken me. I can tell you right now that I've had easily dozens of ideas of what was going to bring me contentment and happiness and fulfillment and all that, and they changed as I got older. They changed as I had more experience. They changed as I got challenged, and I recognized that I was looking for something that wasn't realistic, or I was looking for something that was based on what I was comfortable with right now. And so you start to recognize that it's not about being content at all. It's about being alive. That feeling when you're fully invested in something and you're enthusiastic, you're like, fucking awesome. Even if it's not fun, the fact is that you're invested in it. That's what you're looking for. And that is only found through challenge and enthusiasm. And so there's never going to be an end point you're going to reach where it's just like, now I'm content. But each and every challenge you face is going to remind you that it's up to you. It's up to you how you feel. It's not on your circumstances whatsoever. It really just comes down to you. And that's all we're ever practicing, is recognizing that responsibility and that power that we have in each and every moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely the number one thing that I'm trying to work on day by day, is just sort of like, well, I'm done with working today. What can I do that's gonna make me happy right now? I'm not worried about tomorrow, what's going on, anything like that, maybe groceries, but like anything else, like just like what's gonna make me really happy right now? What can I do with my dogs or something like that? Like just little stuff that I find that makes my week a lot better. And then it comes down to the question, like, am I just going to stay in this? Like, that's where it comes into play. Like, is it just going to be this sort of rotation of like, oh, I go to work, I come home, and I do whatever I want, whatever's going to make me feel fulfilled, or I think so, and then just repeat and repeat. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. I have one last question for you guys, real quick. Is there a book that I've got some notes pulled up? Is there a book that one of you guys would like if you guys both want to recommend one, that would like kind of like just talks about perspective in general, a very general like perspective book that you would recommend?
I would recommend the Tao Te
Wait.
Ching.
Wait, sorry, could you repeat that?
The Tao Te Ching, or the Tao. Basically, it's the foundation of Taoism. It's a very small book. It's like 80 pages long, and those are really small pages. It's all about different perspectives. It's really just about like understanding that the control you're looking for isn't necessarily what you're looking for.
Okay.
That book did me so much good when I was first starting to come to all this, and I was trying to get out of that mentality of trying to get somewhere and all that. It does a lot of good, and there's nothing to believe in.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I've read bits and pieces of it. That actually reminds me, I want to dig into that one a little bit more. But from what I've read of it, I think that's the best you can do. Oftentimes when people ask me for book recommendations, I push beyond just a book of questioning the things that you're holding on to. I think there's a lot of benefit to just questioning what you believe to be the truth about yourself. We build up a lot of ideas of what we are, the situation that we're in, all the things going on in our life, our perceived value, and none of them are the reality of what's actually happening. They're just our perception of it. And so it's very important. It's a very important practice just to be willing to question that and look at things and look at sort of habitual patterns and things that make us uncomfortable, and just dig into it, wonder why. Like, reading books is obviously amazing, like attaining knowledge, learning new things and all that stuff is great, but there's a lot that we build on and kind of hold on to throughout our life and cling to in order to feel better, feel a little bit more certain, despite that not actually being the reality. And so digging into that, along with, I think Tao Te Ching is a perfect one, and then just questioning everything you believe to be the truth about yourself, and digging into that, and because there's, I'm sure, some stuff there that'll maybe surprise you and kind of be exciting to dig into a bit.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. It's super cool.
Thank you, Levi.
Alrighty.
Yeah, appreciate you joining. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. Thanks, Ray.
Gladly. Yeah, absolutely. That was fucking awesome. I love it. I love it when we see people we haven't seen before. I love it when we see people we have seen before. It's just great to be able to connect with people like this, because again, we're all going through this shit to some degree in some way or another. And regardless of how different those ways might seem, underneath it, it really is the same conscious experience of doubting yourself or allowing yourself to be. We have a few more people in the queue. Unfortunately, we have about 10 minutes left. So we're going to let Jay in to join us. Jay would like to discuss some of the changes that he's been making lately as a result of these recognitions. And then we're going to wrap up the show after Jay, just because we will be continuing on Patreon for a tier 2 call for an hour and a half after this. We do apologize to everybody who is in the queue, though, because we would love to chat with you. But do join us on Patreon or for our free group tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern time that you can register for at dualisticunity.com. Jay, how's it going?
Ray, Andrew, how are you?
Hey, what is up, dude? Good to see
Not too
you.
much. You too. Good to see you. Yeah, I'm happy to have a chance to just spend 10 minutes with you, and I'm looking forward to this Vermont retreat coming up. It's going to be a blast just to really spend some time with you guys and everybody there, really. And I've been enjoying this conversation about the retreats and stuff, and kind of going into more depth about what they kind of mean to you guys, or what it means to all of us collectively and everything. So it's a pretty cool conversation. There's been a lot of good stuff actually today, with everything with the mushrooms, electric light, and happiness, and there's a lot of good stuff. And I wanted to kind of talk about how this kind of conversation has affected my life personally, and just to give a little background of who I thought I was at one time. And that thought was that I was a person who was separate, very, very much from an early age. I very much felt separate. And I always felt like I had to defend sort of my place in society. And that caused a lot of negative repercussions, as you could imagine, going on through life. And it isn't till now, and I'm, well, fairly recently, but I'm about to turn 50, and I feel like I just sort of, as they, say woke up or whatever, like a year and a half ago or so. But anyhow, at first, when I first started listening to the show, it was really more conceptual, because I had to kind of like kick it around, you know what I mean? It's like I really had a kind of, it's kind of sort of like, oh man, and then this time, I had to go out and kind of experience. And then I sort of, not backslide, but I had to do what I had to do. And then, I'm back now. And with this new insights that I'm having here with basically just know me, it's kind of like I experienced the flow for one time now. So at least I know that exists, kind of like, how it just does. Like, I know it's there, and it's not something I can ever conceptualize or look at now. But I know that without me in the way, anything is possible. And so, like, in the last 2 weeks here, I have quit smoking. I've joined the gym. I've gone the long way around. I used to think I'd have to like get everywhere I was going like as fast as possible, just because I didn't want to like waste time. You know what I mean? But now I know that's just, it's all for me. And and that's the thing, getting me out of the way makes it more for everybody else, because like all that shit is not clouded. And so now I have just so much more time and availability. And like I'm just ready to get into anything, just trample on all them fucking neural pathways that I've beaten down, create some new shit.
Fuck yeah, I feel that energy. I love that fire. And this is what I'm always talking about to people, especially religious people and spiritual people. And they're like, oh, if you found Jesus. And it's like, man, if you understood the fucking fire that I feel all the time about every fucking thing I do, you wouldn't be asking me whether I believe in your fucking person on a piece of wood at all. Like you'd just be too busy living it. You'd be too busy feeling fucking connected. But that's what it is. It's getting out of the way and realizing like, holy fuck, I've been focusing on such a small little thing. And that's why I felt like it's so small and dark here. It's because I'm doing it to myself. And then you open up your eyes and you're like, holy fuck, this is great. Not great in a way that it's not challenging, not great in a way that it's not unpleasant or uncomfortable. It's great in a way that you don't care. You're just like, I'm enough. And that's it.
Yeah. Oh man, I fucking love to hear that. Jay, because there's the one of my favorite Krishnamurti quotes, there is no conflict without I. And when you're recognizing that you're not something that's so deeply separate from everything else, there isn't so much in the way anymore. And so it's coming at it from the perspective of a lack of things holding you back, as opposed to, coming up with all these reasons to do it. The sort of like Tony Robbins motivation thing, like give yourself a reason. It's just, there's nothing in the way. Like, well, might as well try this. Well, this habit's sort of holding me back from feeling good. I've been using it for a while in order to feel a little bit better, but I'm actually feeling pretty good without it. So maybe I don't need that as much anymore. And oh, wow, that's actually allowing me to do all these other things. And then I can dig into this and dig into that and try this out and do this. And it's like everything comes back on the table when you understand that there isn't this thing, this idea, this doubt holding you back anymore. And so without that doubt, it's like you're able to just dig into anything and everything and in a different way too. It's not even doing it in order to get something out of it. It's just, why the fuck not? I'm here. Might as well give it a shot. So fuck yeah, dude. That's fucking incredible to hear.
Yeah, I really feel great these days. And it's things won't always feel great. And there's pitfalls with all this too. And there's always, stuff like that, things to look out for. But I'm just happy to be on the journey, and the journey, that's another big thing. Anyways, I put that in the suggestions anyhow. Maybe that could be a community topic, say. And I had a whole bunch of questions written down, but I can't find the paper, and I'll see you at the retreat anyways. But yeah, I just wanted to say hi, really, and express that, let y'all know what's been happening over the last couple of weeks here.
I really appreciate it, Jay. It's interesting because I recognize when there is a leap of insight that's been had. I see it. I really do hear myself in it. And so I share your enthusiasm. I'm very excited for you. Of course, after this, we're going to be on Patreon for an hour and a half if you can join us there. Otherwise, you and I are going to sit and shoot the shit at our Vermont retreat. I'm so excited, man, because it's just, you've got it. You've got it. Now it's just watching it unfold.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's an underlying recognition that no matter how intense, how volatile, how brutal, how tough things get, it's like that underlying recognition, that underlying sense, that underlying or knowing that you're not what you think. The situation you're going through, you can get caught up in thinking that it is what you think, but it's always right there. It's like always right there on the other side of that perception. It's like, oh yeah, that's not it. And then it's like, boom, it just drops pretty quick. Whereas, maybe previously it took a lot of work because there was a thought that those thoughts, those perceptions could be it. And so you keep rolling through all of those things. But without that, with that recognition that it never is, it drops off pretty damn quick. And so I'm excited to continue to hear about everything that you're going through, the things that you're willing to try out and test out and work through and go through, willingly face challenges is a beautiful thing to see. So I look forward to hearing all of your updates as you go, man.
Nice. I'm ready to fuck around and find out.
Fuck yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Talk to you soon,
man.
Jay.
What a great way to end this call-in show, right? That's the perfect note to end on. And only just because it's really all about just that enthusiasm. It really is just about that fire. It's not about memorizing concepts. It's not about, how much do I need to understand? What do I need to learn? Nothing, not a fucking thing. You don't need to learn a goddamn thing. All you need to do is be willing to be uncertain. All you have to do is be willing to not have to be right, not have to know. And then just feel it out moment to moment. And that's where you start to discover the self-knowledge that's underneath that need for conceptual knowledge. There's nothing you need to know in terms of a concept. You are the answer that you're looking for. It's just all these questions that you're focused on, holding on to, they come from an illusion that drives them. And so hanging out with us is just an opportunity for you to look at those illusions and not necessarily rise to them right away and go, oh, I got to solve that. Because we'll look at you and go, do you though? Because that seems like a lot of work. And you will have a different option because we know that it's not necessary for you to do that. And then you can remind yourself it's not necessary to do that. And suddenly an option that you forgot was ever there is open to you again and easier to get to. And so that is why it's worth it to join us on these groups or at our retreats or on our Discord, talk to the other members of our community, because it really is just about watching this unfold before us. I'm going to pass it over to Andrew here. We're going to wrap up for the day, and then we're going to join everybody on patreon.com/dualistic unity. It's a tier 2 call tonight. There is a 7-day free trial if you would like to join us, though.
Yeah, isn't that funny? We're all the answer, looking for the answers, looking everywhere but at ourselves for it. So this has been a blast as always. Love the call-in show. Looking forward to the roundtable next week, and then another call-in show in 2 weeks from now. But you can join us on Patreon. I hope to see you there, and if not, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone.